me. And let me get started real quick. Back on the table back there with John, he's got boxes of Quest bars, 21 grams of protein, great for breakfast, great for hiking, whatever. Take the box, take all the boxes, take one. I don't really care, just take some. Because I bought too many of them. Oh, God damn it. All right. Yeah, really. Okay, this month's presentation is going to be Jeff doing single sideband operation. This is a technical deal. But anyway, I'd like to welcome everybody. That was just kind of an intro. Welcome everybody to the meeting. And we got how many, Paul? You counted?
26.
26 people. Well, that's about 10% of the number of people in the club, which is 271 as of the other day. So tell your friends, come on, we've got room for more. All right, do we have any new members here? If so, raise your hand. Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself, Kevin.
Good evening, my name is Kevin Walmsley. I'm the newest member of this afternoon. We've been to the last 10 minutes.
And your call sign?
K0FUR.
Yeah, welcome.
Started on VHF Marine Association. Was in the military, was kind of a radio operator there. And just back to the homicide. And thanks, Travel. Awesome. Oh, yeah, the average skill in class for this club is way down.
All right, any other new members or guests? Any guests? Come on, new members? No more new members.
First time here.
Yeah, how about people that are here for the very first time? Ah, and what's your name?
I'm Chad, M0DOI.
And you live in Evergreen? No.
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I know you. You threw me into the pond, remember?
Yeah, sorry. All right, let's do leadership introductions. I'm, of course, Randy K0TNG. I'm one of the directors at large, and
I am Paul, AC5S. I'm the vice president. I usually have something to say that's usually not funny, but I try to make it funny, but it's not funny. But we're pressed for time tonight, so I'm not going to elaborate, other than the fact that it appears the balloon they shot down over Alaska was an amateur radio balloon, transmitting on whisper.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
That's it, final whisper.
You know, that's information coming out now. It's a amateur radio club in Illinois, and they launch Pico balloons. Yeah. And they build small transmitter modules. They transmit on HF, VHF, and UHF. And it's tracked on whisper. You guys know what whisper is, some of you do. They put up 25 balloons. Some of them, they said, crashed in trees, and some of them never transmitted. And but they have some that have gone around the world a couple times, and they're missing one. Interesting enough, just real quick, you know, if you've been following all this, you might know a Sidewinder missile costs like $472,000, whatever. They said that their balloons cost between $18 and $36. Seriously, they're what you call party balloons, or whatever the case is. And once they get up over 40,000 feet, they just kind of stay there. It's just a natural phenomenon of the helium they put in, this and the other. I will, later on, I'll have the name of the club. It's a very interesting website. They have pictures of the members, and they're all amateurs. And it appears the balloon that was shot down, every time they send one up, it's someone's call sign is associated with it. So they're calling it a W9 something something balloon. Anyway, check that out. It's on Politico. It's on Aviation Week website. I don't think it's made it to the White House yet, or if it has, they haven't talked about it.
Voice talk.
Yes.
Was the PC board made in China? Just asking.
I will almost guarantee you it was.
So it was a Chinese balloon.
Yeah, so anyway, that's all I have to relate to you, and we're really, really glad you're here tonight. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Paul. Next is Scott.
Scott, NA0MT, one of the directors.
Got nothing.
Okay, next is Brad, Dr. Brad.
TV board committee, board chair.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah, I'm Brian, WA0R, I'm the secretary. Jeff, N0DQ, I'm our CTO, and I want to thank Paul for the fake news, because we all know it was aliens.
I'm from Roswell, when you're right.
Yeah.
All right, and Robert's in the back.
I'm Robert, N0CA, I'm the treasurer.
Okay, anybody else that I missed? I go to the meetings, but I may forget somebody. All right. Just quickly, any new licenses? Anybody got a new license, new upgrade? Anybody trying anything new on the radio? Anybody got a new radio? Anybody talk to somebody a long ways away? DX.
Western Sahara on 15 today.
Ah, okay, that's cool.
That's cool.
And anybody else? Okay, we are going to go into our presentation unless somebody has anything they want to add. Oh, hey, by the way, how many members do we have?
271.
Not you. How many members do we have?
I thought you forgot.
No, I'm just asking. I have a giveaway.
276.
You said 271.
How many members?
Woody got it.
These things don't fly worth a damn.
There you go. Toothbrush.
All right, anybody else with a guess? How many members do we have?
271.
Yeah, if anybody wants some Velcro cable ties, come on to the back and we'll get them. All right, Jeff, you're up. Cable tie? I'll be in the bathroom, see me I can.
I'll take them with
All right, guess what we're talking about tonight? Hey, somebody else wins. FT8. We are going to talk a little bit about FT8. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit, there's different levels of experience in the club, right? There's people who've been doing ham radio since 1970. There's people who've been doing ham radio since yesterday. So we're going to talk a little bit about single sideband. What is single sideband? Where did it come from? Why would you use it? How's it different from other modes you might use on the radio? So I'm going to start out here with the Wikipedia definition of single sideband. So this is the fun question. Reading this definition, does anybody even know what this means in English? Because by the end of tonight, you all will. That's the goal for tonight, to be able to read a definition like that and actually make sense of it. So we're going to talk about single sideband, what it is, where it came from, all those fun things. But we can't talk about single sideband without talking about AM first. So AM is the oldest form of voice modulation we still use today. The original big use case, there's always military, there's other things, but the big use case for AM was right about 100 years ago is when AM broadcast stations started coming of age in America. It was around 1920 or so. New York City was, the big start of all this stuff, and LA, much to everyone's surprise. The original use case was to send, broadcast news, music, entertainment, and of course commercials, right? Radio, we think of radio as entertainment, we think of radio as news, we think of radio as all these things, just like we think of Google as search. Not true. Radio is all about commercials, Google's all about commercials. Same basic fundamental idea. AM is actually pretty inefficient. It's actually a pretty terrible way to send signals over the radio, but it's really, really simple. And its efficiency didn't matter so much because it's really easy to just make a bigger transmitter, to make bigger tubes, to make bigger equipment and send out more power. One of the really cool things about AM, remembering that their primary use case was commercials, advertising, it was important to get receivers out to people. So the more people that were listening, the more they could charge for commercials. So it was really easy to make really powerful, crappy transmitters and really cheap and simple to make receivers that they could hand out to people so people could listen to the commercials. So the inefficiency doesn't matter when you can throw 50,000 watts at the problem. And we think of 50,000 watts today as a lot, right? We have KOA right over by Paul's house. You know, he lives in the shadow. If it falls down, it'll probably hit his garage. We think of 50,000 watts as a lot today. When you go back to the 1920s, they were actually running 10 times that much power. They were running half a megawatt or more of power. 50,000 watts is as high as we go today because of FCC regulations. But back in the day, they were pumping out, you know, entire cities worth of power out of a single transmitter. This was a pretty typical General Electric transmitter of the 1920s. In spite of the enormous size, this is actually a moderate size, believe it or not. They went much, much larger than this. And they're incredibly simple. Despite this big size, we're going to look at what an AM transmitter looks like in just a second, because it's important to understand what we're actually doing here. But this thing is shockingly simple on the inside. Most of this has to do with heat management, not generating a signal, getting rid of the extra heat. This is a modern design of a classic 80-meter CW and voice transmitter. This circuit is incredibly simple. There's 12 or 15 parts in here. That's all there is. This thing is a tube. If you're not familiar with modern electronics, that's a triode. And what the triode, we're only using two bits of the triode here. We're not using all three. Triode means three, right? We're only using two. We're using it as a mixer. This part over here generates a 3.579 megahertz sine wave and feeds it into the tube. This bit over here takes audio in, steps it up, feeds it into another bit of the tube, combines the two together. It sums them. A mixer is just a fancy word for an adder. It adds the two signals together, sends it out through a tune circuit to the antenna. That's it. That giant box right here is that scaled up 100,000 times. That's all it is. That's how simple it was to make an AM transmitter. It still is. Receivers are even simpler. This is the circuit diagram of a crystal receiver. This acts as a rectifier. This is an old school diode, basically. There's a tune circuit for tuning the whole thing. There's a ground, there's an antenna, and there's headphones. Fundamentally, that's an AM receiver. Now, you can do better than that. You can put an audio amplifier here to get a little bit better signal. You can put an amplifier, you know, on the antenna to pick up signals from further away. You can do some nice audio shaping and things like that to get a better signal, but that's how simple you can build a receiver. This was about the equivalent of today, about $20 to buy a radio like this back in the 1920s. So they were able to get lots and lots and lots of them out into the world. This is the signal you get when you build that circuit that we saw 2 slides ago, and you create a signal. This is what you actually get if you were to look on a modern radio with a waterfall like an ICOM 7300 or 7610 or one of the spiffy new Yaesus. This is the actual signal that you will see on the display. You've got all your audio here. You've got a mirror image of your audio here, the exact same signal, but reversed. And then you've got, they called it back in the day a pilot signal in the middle. We call it a carrier, which is nothing more than just a simple tone that's in the middle right here that gets sent. And that's how your signal is broken up. That's the kind of signal that's created when you create an AM signal. Something to understand about human voice. The human ear can hear from a few tens of hertz up to about 20,000 hertz if you're in your 20s. You can hear this incredible range of sound. Of course, most of the people in this room can't hear that, including me, but a young person can. In reality, you don't need to send 20 kilohertz worth of signal to be understood. The human voice, if you take from about 300 hertz up to about 3,000 hertz, which is right around 3 kilohertz, that's a nice, audible, easily understood signal. You don't need all those other frequencies. You need from about 300 to about 3,000. So when you plot this out, this is what an AM signal actually looks like.
I've tuned my radio up to the novice portion of 10 meters. I'm sitting here on 28,400 and I'm transmitting on AM. I'm not actually really transmitting just on 28,400. I'm transmitting all the way from 28,397 all the way up to 28,403, right? Because I'm transmitting 3 kilohertz above my carrier, 3 kilohertz below my carrier, plus my carrier signal in the middle. So when you look at this, it's obvious that this is fairly inefficient. It was incredibly easy to build transmitters that would send this. It was incredibly easier to build receivers that would receive it, but it's a horrible use of spectrum. We're using a whole lot more spectrum here than we really need. And when we start looking at how the power is divided up in here, it's a horrible use of your transmitter power. But we need a couple definitions to work with before we talk about how to make this better. Oh,
It's beautiful audio though.
it is beautiful
Oh, yes,
audio.
it is.
It sounds wonderful, and that's why we still use it today to listen to reruns of Rush Limbaugh as we commute to work in the morning. So here's how the power is broken up in that screen. I'm going to go back here for a second. So we've got a carrier, we've got audio, we've got a reverse duplicate of the audio here. Here's how the audio is actually broken up. If I have my mic gain all the way up and I'm screaming into my microphone, right? I'm transmitting the most power I can possibly transmit. The way the official AM signal is defined at 100% modulation, which you never get to 100%, but that's the way it's defined. The audio power is half the carrier power, which means this little thing that carries no information whatsoever, is no useful part of the signal, is 50% of your power, right there, being wasted. The other half of your power is in the actual audio signal. So I've got 25% of my power carrying audio, another 25% carrying a duplicate of the audio, and 50% basically doing nothing. So at 100 watt, we all have 100 watt HF radios at home. Typically, you'll get about a 40 watt carrier, which means you've got 20 watts left over for audio at 100% modulation, which means that's 10 watts and that's 10 watts. That's what you're actually sending out with information on it. But you're really not modulating at 100%, you're probably at 80%. So you've got 8 and 8 going out of your 100 watt radio. This is one reason why AM is not that common anymore for ham use. So before we can talk about how we're going to make that better, let's talk about our two definitions. Number one, signal to noise ratio. You hear this term thrown around all the time. About half the time it's wrong. A signal to noise ratio is a ratio. It's something to one. A ratio is two numbers. There's lots of ham radio software when you look at, and it'll have a column for you've got all the people you're talking to in a digital mode, and it's got a column that says signal to noise ratio, and it'll say 3 dB. That's not a signal to noise ratio. That's a useful number, but anything stated in dB or dBm is not a signal to noise ratio. They can be converted back and forth, but know what a signal to noise ratio is because it's important. And we're going to talk about the definition in just a second. Signal strength is also not signal to noise ratio. When I pull out my phone and I look at how many bars I have, here in the library I have 2 bars on my screen. But that's not signal to noise ratio, that's signal strength. A signal to noise ratio tells you how strong your signal is relative to the noise that's being received on the same frequency. So a signal to noise ratio tells you how loud what you want to hear is compared to the other junk that's also coming through on the radio. So as hams, we very rarely care about signal strength. Signal strength is meaningless. If I'm getting 400 dBm of signal and 400 dBm of noise, I'm not hearing anything, right? I'm not able to pick out anything out of that stuff that's coming through my radio. On the other hand, if I'm only getting 10 dBm of signal and 1 dBm of noise, I can hear it perfectly because the ratio is higher. It doesn't matter what the amounts are, it matters how they compare one to another, which is why this signal strength bar on the top of my phone is the most useless thing on the front of this phone. It doesn't tell me how good of a signal I'm getting, it's telling me how much radio energy is coming into my phone. I don't care about that. I can get a better signal with 1 bar than I can with 5 bars sometimes, because my signal to noise ratio is so much better. Depending on which mode you're using, CW, AM, sideband, FM, PSK31, different signal to noise ratios are usable numbers. Generally, PSK and CW have the highest signal to noise, and we're going to talk about this in a minute and why, and FM is probably the worst, and we'll talk about why that is in just a minute here. But the higher the first number, the easier it is to demodulate or understand the signal. So that's what signal to noise ratio is. The next thing we have to talk about is bandwidth. How wide is the signal that you're sending? So if I'm sending 100 watts of power, I'm sending 100 watts of power. It doesn't matter if I'm sending it in a really narrow mode like CW or a really wide mode in FM, 100 watts is 100 watts. That's the first thing to remember. But anytime you grow the bandwidth, you grow the noise proportionally. So if I have a 6 kilohertz wide signal, which is what amateur radio AM is, and my signal to noise ratio is 3:1, if I could cut that down to 3 kilohertz wide, all other things being equal, my signal to noise ratio would double. I'd have a 6:1 signal to noise ratio instead of 3:1. So a wider signal for a given amount of power has less of a signal to noise ratio than a narrower signal with the same amount of power. You can shrink the amount of bandwidth that a signal uses all the way down to a certain minimum. And we're not going to go there tonight. It's Claude Shannon's information theory. You don't want to go there, trust me. But just the narrower your signal is for a given amount of power, the easier it is to get a higher signal to noise ratio, which means that easier it is to understand the signal, provided that the information you want to send fits within the bandwidth. So we already talked about the human voice. About 2,700 hertz is kind of the optimum number, which means that's kind of our low, that's our bar we can't go under, right? We got to have 2,700 hertz. You can actually go down to 22 or 2,400, but voice starts sounding a little weird, but you can do it, and there are times where it makes sense. So I like to think about this like watering your lawn. So if you're like me and you live on a dirt road and you live in Douglas County hates cars because they put magnesium chloride on the roads, which eats your car. So in the wintertime, every time you get a nice sunny weekend, you want to wash your car and get all that crap off your car so it doesn't rust away into a pile of junk. So imagine I've gone to Walmart, I bought a 25-foot hose. It's one of those crappy little half-inch hoses, that are $3.99 on sale. A typical suburban house has about 40 psi of pressure in an outside hose. Given 40 psi and a half-inch hose that's 25 feet long, you can get about 10 gallons per minute out of that hose. That's about how much water comes out the end of it. So think of that 10 gallons per minute as the number of watts that your radio is putting out. So I screw on my hose and I open the spigot and I go out to my truck and I point the hose at it, and I can squirt water just about as far as Brian's sitting right there. That's about how far the water is going to come out of that hose, right? So that's like an AM signal. If I want to spray it a little further, a little harder, that kid that's following my teenage daughter around comes down the street on his bicycle and I want to squirt him as he comes by. So I screw one of those, the gun lever things on the end of my hose, and when you pull it, it sprays about 10 times as far. It's still 10 gallons an hour. It's still the same amount of water coming out, but I'm forcing it through a smaller hole, right? That's like narrowing my bandwidth. It's the same amount of power. It's still 10 gallons per minute. But because I'm forcing it through a smaller hole, I'm using less bandwidth. My signal isn't as wide. I can shoot it a lot further. If I really want to get the junk off my car, I fire up my Briggs & Stratton power washer and I run the hose through it, and I got this little 1 millimeter hole in the end of it that if I get too close to my truck, I can peel the paint off of it. It's still only 10 gallons per minute, but now I'm forcing that 10 gallons per minute through an even tinier little piece of spectrum. That's like FT8 or PSK31 or CW Morse code. It's all 10 gallons an hour, but it's all about how you use it. So that's an interesting way to think about bandwidth versus signal to noise, right? Your signal to noise ratio is how far the water shoots, and your bandwidth is how little the hole is in the end of your hose. All right, so we're back to this picture again. what can we do to AM to make it, to raise its signal to noise ratio by, among other things, maybe putting more power through it, maybe crunching down the bandwidth a little bit. Well, the obvious thing to do is get rid of the pilot, get rid of the carrier, right? That's, on our 100-watt radios cranked all the way up, that's 40 watts right there that's doing absolutely nothing. So that's the first thing we do, we get rid of that. So now, we've got all this power where these, oops, my bad, I'm hitting the remote button. We've got all this power here, now we can put into the actual signal instead of putting it into the pilot. So that automatically, we double the amount of power we're putting out on our signal. That's a pretty good start. We might even triple the amount of power. Just because of the way modern HF radios work, you don't get to use the whole 100 watts. So when you switch to, when you get rid of that carrier, you double or triple the amount of power you're getting. The other thing you can do is these are redundant. They're carrying the exact same information twice in your signal. Not because it's necessary, but because it's really, really cheap and easy to build a transmitter and a receiver that does this. Versus building a single sideband transceiver takes a lot more electronics, both to transmit and to receive. So pick one. Doesn't matter which one. We can pick lower sideband, we can pick upper sideband. It doesn't matter as long as the transmitter and the receiver agree on which sideband we're going to use. So when we do both of those things, we get rid of the carrier and we pick just one of the sidebands. Now we're going from 28400 to 28403. We've cut our bandwidth in half. And we basically tripled our power on top of that. So this double triple, we cut our bandwidth in half, that doubles our signal to noise ratio. We suppress the carrier, that triples the amount of power we can throw at the problem. 2 times 3 is 6, which is 7.8 dB. An S unit is 6 dB, so 7.8 dB is 1.3 S units. So just by switching from AM to single sideband, in the real world, this is actually closer to 2 S units, is how it really works out in the real world with real ham radio transceivers. 2 S units is not bad. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's the equivalent of taking your 100-watt radio and making it a 400-watt radio, right? That's a pretty good jump in signal right there. This is also why CW, PSK31, FT8, all these digital modes are so phenomenally incredible compared to sideband. These are working more like a 20 to 30 dB gain versus a voice mode, which is why there's lots and lots and lots of QRP CW radios on the market, right, for doing Morse code, but there's not really that many single sideband QRP rigs. And the reason is a CW radio at 5 watts will work about the same as a single sideband radio at about 30 or 40 watts, right, in terms of me talking to a specific point on the other end. This is why CW is worth knowing, besides the fact that it's just fun. You can carry a smaller, cheaper radio with a crappier antenna, with a smaller battery, spend less money, carry less weight, and operate for more time, all other things being equal to the same guy on the other end of the connection. This is why the digital modes in CW are so cool to do with the really, really small radios, is because you get the equivalent of so much more power using AM or single sideband. So here's an example of the bandwidth of a couple common modes that we use. By the way, commercial radio AM is more like 15 kilohertz because they want a better voice quality, but ham radio AM is about 6 kilohertz. Single sideband is half that. CW is about a 20th of that, right? About a 20th of single sideband. FM, this is why nobody uses FM for anything except talking on the repeaters. It's a horrible way to send a signal from one way to another in terms of efficiency. Now, when you're in your car and you can run 50 watts out of your radio and the repeater's on top of the mountain over here or on top of the tower over there, FM is great, right? It provides beautiful voice quality, really easy to understand. But if you want to talk to somebody 100 miles away, FM is your worst possible choice. If you've ever played with FM and tried to see what the limits are, how far you can actually talk to people, sometimes you're a little bit surprised, but mostly you end up disappointed. I would encourage you, borrow one of our club radios that'll do 2-meter single sideband or 2-meter CW. There's a 2-meter net that meets at 8 a.m. in the Denver area every morning, or 6 days a week, not on Sunday. Monday through Saturday at 8 a.m. on 144-220. We get people check in from New Mexico, Nebraska, Wyoming on 2 meters. But it's 2 meters single sideband. And sometimes 2 meters CW, it's not 2 meters FM. So play around with this. It's kind of cool what you can do with sideband or some of the digital modes versus, you know, this is where sideband came from, right? It came originally from AM. We talked about the obvious way to make an AM signal more efficient, but there are other ways. There's other things that have been done. There's a thing called double sideband. And double sideband is keeping AM, except just getting rid of the carrier in the middle. That's really rare, but sometimes you'll find kit radios that do double sideband. I wouldn't buy one. There's some weird problems with them, like you can't talk from one double sideband radio to another. One of them has to be single sideband, or they can't receive each other. It's kind of crazy. You'll find a thing called AM equivalent. You usually find this in green radios, Army radios, right, that you carry into the field. What AM equivalent is they keep the carrier, but they get rid of one of the sidebands. It's kind of weird, but an AM receiver will actually receive that just fine, just at a little bit less voice quality. So that's kind of another weird way of doing something strange with AM. Another thing you'll find in military gear is CW equivalent. So in a lot of military radios, I have a PRC 515 and it works this way. It's a late 70s, early 80s 20-watt military radio, you know, with push buttons on the front. It's super cool. You can park a truck on it. Use it as a doorstop. The way they work is they don't have, CW is when you send a single tone on the precise frequency that you want to send it on. Well, what's interesting is you can do the same thing with single sideband. If you inject an audio tone into a single sideband signal in a perfect single sideband transmitter, and we'll talk about how they're not perfect in a minute, in a perfect single sideband transmitter, it will send just a single tone out, which is interesting, and that's the way a lot of military radios will send CW. Unfortunately, military, for whatever reason, the US Army loves 1,000 hertz as their CW tone, which is just way too high for most people, and most of them will send a 1 kilohertz tone into a single sideband transmitter and get a 1 kilohertz tone out the other side plus whatever frequency you're turned to, right? That's just kind of a weird thing you can do with sideband. That's also how our digital modes work. Right, when you're sending FT8, as an example, you're sending a series of single tones, one at a time. And you're putting them on a single sideband transmission. The problem is, single sideband transmitters aren't perfect. You don't get just a nice, clean, narrow, single signal out of your single sideband transmitter. You get all this vestigial stuff because transmitters aren't perfect. So they send a little bit of signal out the other side. So your 5-watt radio that you're sending a CW or a digital mode signal through using single sideband probably ends up about 3 watts of the part of signal you want and another 2 watts of just completely wasted power that doesn't do anything for you. Which is why I brought this.
QDX.
Anybody seen these things? The QDX? These are amazing little radios, and not just because they're $59, and not just because they're so small. They're amazing because they use a completely different way of sending a signal than any other ham radio has ever used in history. The guy who designed these, the guy in Turkey, who, I forget his name, is a German guy, Hans, the guy who designed these, figured out a completely different way to send a signal. When you're sending your FT8, you're sending a series of tones. And you send them to a single sideband transmitter, which turns them into a waveform like this and sends it out. And again, this is wasteful because you've got all this side stuff on the side of it that's also going out that's just completely wasting power. What these radios do is revolutionary. There's a little computer inside that listens to the signal coming from your laptop, your FT8 signal. And as soon as it starts sending a tone, within like 1/10 of a millisecond, it figures out what frequency that tone is and sends out a single pure signal, just like a CW radio, a single narrow pure signal on the tone that's being sent from your radio. And as it steps through all those tones, sending your digital signal, the computer inside decodes those one at a time and sends a series of perfect signals out the radio, which means this thing at 5 watts actually sends a 5-watt signal out, not a 3-watt signal with 2 watts wasted. So there's some really cool things you can do when you understand sideband and how it works and how it's used. There's some really clever, creative things you can work around doing that. This, by the way, was the first common ham radio transceiver to do single sideband, introduced in 1957 for $770, which if you convert inflation on it is $8,019.37. That's a really expensive radio. But that was one of the first common ham radio single sideband transmitters you could buy after World War II. So now let's go back to this Wikipedia definition. A single sideband modulation, which is single sideband suppressed carrier, does that phrase now make sense? We're taking a double sideband with a carrier, we're using one sideband, a single sideband, we're suppressing the carrier, we're not sending it, and we're only sending one side of the sideband. That's what single sideband is. When you turn your radio on HF up to upper sideband or lower sideband, that's what you're doing. You're taking that signal apart and just sending one piece of it instead of the whole thing. All right. And I put credits in here because I stole the pictures from another website. Questions?
Do some of the new radios, like the ICOM 7300, do they have switches where you can reduce the signal-to-noise ratio through the radios?
Yeah, there's different ways of increasing your signal-to-noise ratio. Filtering is one. So you can adjust your filters in on a modern radio with DSP filters. You can adjust the filters in to just pick out exactly the signal you want. There's also DSP noise reduction. And noise reduction, what it tries to do is pick out just the static and get rid of that, but leave the other part of the signal. Fundamentally, what they're trying to do is raise your signal-to-noise ratio digitally, computer method, by trying to suppress the static. And by suppressing the second number in the ratio, the first number is bigger, and therefore you've got a better signal. So there's a couple different ways that modern radios do that, but filtering is the primary one, adjustable filters. But did that make sense to everybody? Does single sideband suppressed carrier now mean something to you? Any other questions?
Touch on upper versus lower and why we,
Okay,
not necessarily why, but just.
Well, there is a why. So historically, you use lower sideband below 10 megahertz and upper sideband above 10 megahertz. There's no technical, modern, today reason for that, but historically there was. So all modern receivers, except for some kits that you can build, are super heterodyne receivers. Sometimes they're one stage, sometimes they're two stage. The super het frequency in the early receivers was 9.7 megahertz. And it made the electronics design easier because they could just kind of electronically flip from below that carrier to above that carrier by swapping from one sideband to another and avoid putting another $50 worth of electronics in the box. If you're in the US military, you use upper sideband everywhere. If you're an airline, well, in modern radios, you use upper sideband nearly everywhere. Airline pilots, when they use HF over the ocean, that's upper sideband exclusively. There's no technical reason why you have to do that. It's historical reasons. And digital mode, digital modes, with the exception of RTTY, are almost exclusively upper sideband, no matter what frequency you're on. But there is a historical reason why it was typically lower sideband for 160, 80, 40 meters, and then upper sideband for 20, 17, 15, 12, and up.
Everything else.
What's that?
Everything else.
And everything else, yeah. Any other questions?
So Jeff, you mentioned filtering on the receive side
Yeah.
to increase signal to noise ratio. Would it be correct to say that decreasing the width of our incoming audio that we're modulating our radio with, would that increase the signal strength above the noise floor for someone on the receive side?
Yes. Yes, it would. Again, keeping in mind there are limits to how narrow you can go. Like, for example, with human voice, when you get below about 2400 hertz, it gets really weird, and when you get below about 2200, it's not understandable.
Yeah.
But yes, within limits, you can reduce that width on the transmitter side or the receiver side, or both. Typically, it's done on the receiver side, but there's no reason you can't also limit on the transmit side. Anything else? Or we'll give it back to the Randy.
Thank you. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Here, you can wave that around if it makes you feel important. Okay.
All right, I lost my agenda. I was working. Good job, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
I missed most of it.
Even
It's
though
on
you were
YouTube
here.
Live.
Oh, I had XL at the house. They said they were smelling gas. I think it was the septic system next door.
Those problems solve themselves.
Yeah. All right, current topics and committee reports. Let's see. Scott, pedaling for Parkinson's. Would you like to give an update?
Yeah, I'll do that real quick.
Would you like a microphone?
No, I think I can do this.
Oh, and I was supposed to open a webpage for you and I forgot.
Yeah, that's coming in a minute.
Okay.
So, Pedaling for Parkinson's, Dan N2SRK is usually the coordinator on those events. Dan's not here tonight, so I'll fill in between. Pedaling for Parkinson's has gone virtual only. Therefore, there is no official ride day or get together in the park to start and finish. It's still a fundraiser, it's still a viable deal. For those bike riders wanting to do it, they will virtually say, I'm going to go do this 20-mile ride, 10-mile ride, whatever they want to do. They pick the date and time, they do their ride, and their fundraising occurs, but there's no hoopla behind it. So, Pedaling for Parkinson's really appreciated all of our efforts in everything we did, but they, unfortunately, due to budget constraints and organizing, they have downsized to virtual only.
However,
Something on that?
however,
But wait, there's more.
but there's
Lots
more. So I'll tell you a quick story. Scott can help me with this in a minute. Randy and I met with the Parker Days Festival organizer, and they work for the city of Parker. And we were going to the meeting to see about getting a table that we could set up for the Parker Radio Association during Parker Days. You guys all know what Parker Days is. It's a big festival they have here in downtown Parker. A lot of carnival rides, a lot of food, and then everybody that's anybody has a table. A lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, Allstate. I mean, a lot of different people have tables set up, and it's a big event. It covers all the way from the library here, all the way to Parker Road, and way back up on the hill where all of the amusement rides are and everything. And they do this every year. Well, this organizer, who we were talking to about having a table, said, okay, no problem, you can have a table, you can have whatever you want, but we want to talk to you about something. So we said, what is it? And they said, we have not a proposition for you. We need some help. And if you guys can provide eyes and ears and radios and people to help us, we'll pay you. And we said, well, that's all good, but we can't, nonprofit, we can't be paid. They said, well, okay. And Randy and I talked to him a little bit. And so we said, how about if we volunteer our services and then you provide a donation to the club after the fact? And they just thought that was fantastic. So we got into the the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, and it turns out that they were asking for 3 things. And the board met and went over those 3 requests, and we decided on one of the 3. The largest request that they made of us, we decided we think we can do, and the board voted to commit the club. And our chairman was like, I'm going to be out of town this week. So we're not going to let that happen. Anyway, here's the situation. The number they were talking about donating to us is $3,000 to $4,000. Okay? We haven't, there's some things that we have to talk about specifically with them. We haven't nailed that number down, but that's a substantial donation to our club. And what they want us to do is, there's an area they call the beer garden. Have any of you been to a beer garden? Yeah. Okay. It expanded 2 years ago to a much larger area. And they're doing that again this year. It goes from about...
It's all of O'Brien Park.
All of O'Brien Park essentially is a beer garden. And there's 8 entrances to the beer garden, and those are also the exits. They want us to provide eyes and ears and a radio at each of those 8 points. Okay? And we have to do it. Part of it is the time frame, and I'm going to explain that here in a minute. Let me tell you what we're not going to do. We're not going to do anything like, let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to simply, if people are carrying a beer outside that imaginary line, we're going to remind them that the beer can't go past that line, can't go past that gate, can't go past that opening. That is the extent of our conversation with that person. We're not reporting it. We're just going to simply remind people that they can't take the beer outside the beer garden. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to be eyes and ears for them. We're going to have a shirt. It's going to say event staff, communications staff. And we're sure we're going to have people come up to us and we lost kids. How do I find this? Where do I go for this? So we're going to be manning those locations, those 8 locations, for Friday evening, all day Saturday, and all day Sunday. So that works out to be we need about 60 people, 60 people to do that. But in addition to that, we're going to have Randy's trailer set up next to the Parker PD Command Center. They have a new command trailer thing. And we're going to have a table at that location. So when people come by there, they can take brochures and see who we are. So we've committed to that. And so we're going to have to do that. So it's a little different logistically, right, than pedaling for Parkinson's. We don't have to worry about a lot of the things that we were trying to eyeball for the race. Different items that we're looking for, really more of just eyes and ears. And there will be a very limited number of things that we communicate back to the command trailer. Very limited number of things. Okay? People have medical emergencies, lost kids,
Found kids.
Clearly illegal activities, that fights, things of that nature, we report that back to the command trailer. The piece where we're going to talk to people about not taking the beer past the imaginary line, that's all we're doing. No additional communications, confrontation. If they have 3 beers in their hand, one against their chest and 2 in their arms, and they're walking out, doesn't matter. They walk, and we don't report it
And
because we don't.
Signage there. It's not just us.
Right.
There's signage there all over the place.
So in addition to us being there at those 8 points, there's 80 or 90 people that work for the promoter that are also going to be in the entire Parker Days Festival as well, along with Parker PD, other law enforcement. So we're one piece of the puzzle. We will attend meetings with the organizer and with the law enforcement. We'll learn a little more about what we're going to be doing. And the times are very simple. We've broken it down to different shifts. And we're going to have Friday is 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. or 10:30 p.m. So 4 p.m., 10:30 p.m.
What were the dates again, please?
The dates are June the 9th, June the 10th, and June the 11th.
Thank you.
Okay, so Friday, 4 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Now, we've already thrown up, thanks to Jeff, a sign up.
So in that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's not that long.
Yeah, those aren't that long of a shift.
They're not.
We have
Yeah,
divided those
thank you.
up into digestible pieces, roughly 4-ish hour blocks. If you wanted to work more, you're welcome to work more, but we're looking for about a 4-hour commitment.
About a 4-hour block. Those are the times that the festival's open. Thank you. I kind of didn't go through that exactly right. And if you want to do 4 hours on a Friday, 4 hours on Sunday, thank you. We'll just say that up front, right? Right, Randy? Thank you very much, because we think we're going to need some people working the double shifts. We also are going to be having to man the command trailer, and Randy is signed up for all shifts, but we did that on purpose. So if you want to work the command trailer instead of one of the 8 points, then you can talk to Randy and he'll work that in. Now, why don't you talk a little bit about the sign-up, Scott?
So the sign-ups, Jeff has done it through
Sign Up
Genius. And in there, we're going to put out information. We have a QR code that'll take you straight to it. When you go into it, you'll see a list of dates and shifts during that date. You can pick a shift, meaning you're going to work one of the checkpoints or a rover or the command trailer or our table for that shift. And you can pick as many shifts as you want to do. You're welcome to those. I did ask Jeff, I didn't get an answer. Are we able to overbook? Let's say we had 2 spots in the beer garden at entry point 1. Are we able to book 3 or 4 or more people to that? Can we
Right now,
overbook?
there are 8 spots for entrances and exits.
Right.
1 spot for a rover, 1 spot for the trailer.
Okay.
So when they're full, but you can ask people if they want to trade and swap things around.
Okay. And what we may do, if we can, is expand that.
Yeah.
And the reason I explain this is I've done a lot of Disney marathon, half marathons, a lot of other marathon and bike races on Catalina Island. And when I did all the scheduling for those, and when I did those, I needed 12 people, for example, for a half marathon outside the park. But I would get 16 or 18 people to sign up for me. And I had some of those people were very qualified and I could move them around very easily. Some had mobility issues, some had time constraint issues, and I would put those in specific spots. So it's good to have some alternates, and we're going to work through making sure we have some for this event as well, so that we can get relief for people and cover if suddenly, the grandkid has to have help and you can't be there, we've got somebody else to fill your shoes, kind of deal.
So, for those of you who go back with us a long way, we used to do Parker Night Out, and we partnered with the police department, Parker PD, and we had a good relationship with the city and the PD until that Yagi antenna fell down and hit that lady, but they didn't ask us back after that.
She's still recovering immediately.
Yeah, that was a really cool antenna because it was kind of a miniature tri-banner thing. Anyway, but that club member that had that, we sent him down to Florida. But this is a great opportunity for Parker Radio Association. I cannot emphasize to you enough. We've been around since 2014, coming up on 10 years here, pretty quick. We have worked pedaling for Parkinson's for a number of years. We've done Parker Night Out a number of years. We helped with the CERT organization a little bit early on. This is a really, really good opportunity for this club to make contacts within the city, make contacts within the police department, but this promoter does other events as well. He and his wife are fairly well known in that industry, and they've coordinated the big parade in downtown Denver for about 10 years. They even coordinated one of the Pope's visits years ago. Okay, so they really know what they're doing. And when we sat down with them, we were really impressed. We didn't know who they were. We had no idea about what their capabilities were. We turned down an event last year because the organization came to us and it was very clear that they didn't have the knowledge and expertise to pull off this 100-mile bike ride. And in addition to that, they started, they were contacting us, should have contacted us a year ahead of time. And we just don't want to associate with organizations that don't really understand what they're doing. And we want to be, we want to be known as an organization that can deliver and deliver what we say we're going to deliver correctly, on time, and in some cases on budget. Pedaling for Parkinson's has talked about the Park and Radio Association for years. And they've said that they don't know how they did the race before they met us. So that's kind of reputation that we have. So we have an opportunity here to do a lot of things, a lot of good things for the club, and also to help other people. So I really encourage you, take a look at those dates on your calendar. And that was, again, Friday, June the 9th, Saturday, June the 10th, and Sunday, June the 11th. And please, if you can, go online. It comes out in the blast. Where's Brian? It comes out in the blast every Sunday. There's a link plus a QR code if you want to copy that or do something with that. Please go on as soon as you can and sign up. We have 30.
So there's 66 total slots. We filled, as of this morning, 36 of those slots. We have 30 left.
Yeah.
And some people have signed up for one shift on one day. Other people, multiple people have signed up for 5 shifts spread across 3 days. Nobody's asking you to do all 5.
Right.
But we welcome it if you'd like to.
And I get it. Somebody
So
told me,
we're
somebody emailed me and said, well, this isn't quite as, flashy as going out and working with Pedaling for Parkinson's and helping the rider that went down, or, all different things that we did for that organization. It's not, right? But from the standpoint of our visibility and publicity and what we can give back to the community, this is a fantastic event, and we really, really hope everyone will take a look at that and at least sign up. At least sign up for one. I mean, we have 271 members. Is that the number? Do I get a prize?
Yes.
Too late.
Okay, so if you can, so how many people have signed up already? We really haven't advertised it much except on the repeaters, on the net. So thank you so much. And those that haven't, if you have availability that weekend, please do. Any questions?
2 things real quick, and I'll
Yeah.
catch these 2 questions here. We are going to do a little bit of training to some expectations once we meet with the promoter to figure out what their expectations of us are, so that we can get it out to the membership. There's that. 2 is you are going to need at least just an HT. We will be able to use our repeater and or simplex because it's such a close proximity. We're not going to need the heroics we did with Pedaling for Parkinson's.
We will have some HTs available in the trailers.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have an HT.
Yeah, so if you don't have an HT, don't.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. We
We'll come
will
up with
provide
one.
one. We will provide one for you.
Yes.
You do need a license.
So questions?
Who said Belfast? Question, just questions.
Do you need at-risk persons reporting forms for your watch standards? Like someone walks up and says, I'm missing my
What-
uncle or my kid.
Once we
You
figure
write it
out-
down and hand it to the PD?
What their expectation is,
Yeah.
Randy and I, and there's a few others in here, are retired law enforcement. So we will make sure we cover exactly what you need. And we'll make sure that the training includes those items. The other items that are going to be talked about in the training, I'll fair warn you what's coming, is due to the Boston Marathon with the bombing, there is going to be the big uh-oh. So we will go over expectations and maybe some how-tos so that at least you can get your mind wrapped around these types of things. It's not expected, it's not a typical thing that would occur here, but we are going to cover it. So we'll run the gamut of everything in this training, and make sure everybody's up to speed on and comfortable with what they.
And we don't have all the expectations from the promoter at this
No.
point in time. And there may be some expectations that we clearly don't want to to be involved in, and we don't think that's the case from the initial conversation we had. We think it's a very straightforward situation. We're not law enforcement, we're not security, we're simply
Communicators.
eyes and ears and communicators, that's it. But we will get those expectations and those requirements, as it were, from the promoter, and then we will have a meeting. The promoter will actually be there, as will most likely representative from Parker PD and the city and some other people as well. We'll invite them as well. And we'll have this all pretty well taken care of and ready to go. I think a long time before they need us to be ready, we'll be ready. That's one of the reasons why we're trying to sign up for the positions, the slots now. Because the promoter was saying, well, like, if you give us an okay and you're going to do it, you'll have 2 or 3 months to get people signed up. We said, no, that's not how we roll. We need to make sure we have, by the end of this month, we really would like to have all those slots filled so we can get back, first meeting with the promoter, we can say, done deal. We're ready and we want to involve you in the training, that type of thing. So,
Stan, did you have a question?
It sounds like there's going to be a lot of people. Is there going to be parking someplace for promoters? I mean, with the yellow t-shirts?
We're working on
Yeah,
that. That is one of our checklist items.
yeah, we're working on that. Parking is limited. It's not just limited for attendees, it's limited for everybody. And if the question is there going to be a special parking area for us or for other, maybe first responders? The answer is we don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. So there are some challenges along those lines. The other two things they asked us to do, by the way, there's a second beer garden that's going to be back over here by the library, by a military exhibit. First time they're doing a military exhibit. Parker PD, or Parker, City of Parker and Parker PD will not let them fly in a helicopter. They were trying to do that. So they're going to actually bring a helicopter in, a military helicopter on a trailer. So anyway, but there's a beer garden there. They wanted us to do the same thing. We said no at this first go around. And they also wanted us to be eyes and ears up in the carnival area. And we said no to that as well. So we want to do this year, we want to do this really well. And then if they have a contract for the following, for 24 as well. We would expect to be, that we'd be asked to do this again. And at that time, we might look at additional tasks. But at this time, we're just doing the main beer garden. So.
And I wouldn't be too concerned about the parking, we'll figure something out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
If we have to park at my house, we jump in one car and come down or something.
Yeah.
We can do that too, shuttle back and forth.
Other questions? Okay.
Watch the blast.
Watch the blast Sunday, please.
Everybody
And-
get the blast? Anybody not getting the blast? All right. Just want to make sure you're getting the info.
And the blast comes from this gentleman right over here, Brian.
What's next, Randy?
The guy wearing the life preserver.
What was next?
What's next
Are we-
is,
are we still-
Elmer and new member committee. Brad's not here, but Jerry's here.
Jerry's here.
would you like a mic?
No. I'll be quick, I'll be right. So I am not Brad. Brad is a new grandpa as of today.
All right.
Congratulations. I'm Jerry, AG 7U. Next Tuesday, we're going to have an Elmer meeting. We'll be back here at the library, start the same time as did tonight, 6 o'clock. It's either this room or that room, I forget which. Please join us for next Tuesday. We have 2 topics. We'll be building on the HF presentation that was given today, kind of getting into more of the application. And then Dirk here is bringing out his special sophisticated equipment to test your radios. It could be any radio you want to bring. But what's really come to light recently is some of the antitones. They're not exactly spot on for their frequency. They're a little off. And Dirk has software and the ability to test, to look for that and adjust for that. So all of you Anytone users, come on over. Let Dirk tell you about what he's going to do next Tuesday, and let him put your radio on his test equipment.
Even your bow.
Even your Baofeng if you want to.
No, I don't do bow anytime.
Draw the line soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, please join us for next Tuesday. Now in March, March, we're going to start one of our 2 antenna builds coming this year.
Yay.
That's all I'm going to say. You don't want to miss March. Please be here for March. You're going to get a nice surprise. Towers. Nice surprise. So definitely join us for March. You don't want to miss it.
And it's a lingering surprise.
Can you solder in here?
Yes.
Yes.
We have done that.
We've never asked of them, but we have.
Something went off.
Nothing went off the first time, no.
We gotta
And don't let your Yagi fall over and hit someone.
Right.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. All right, repeater committee. Wayne,
Nothing really to report, just
louder,
basically.
please.
Nothing really to report, just basically get on the air and test them out and let us know if there's any issues.
Okay, any questions for Wayne? Echo link questions?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell about Telegram while we're here?
Telegram, Brian had sent out some links in the blast. Telegram is just an instant messenger client, and we created a Parker Radio group basically, and there's 27 people I think in there, or 32. And it's just basically any information I posted, the link to the live today, any questions you can post in there, just, live communication with another one of the group. So feel free to hop in there, and I heard a couple pings when I posted in there, so people do have it on their phones, but it's via the computer, via phone. There's multiple ways to connect to it.
And you can harass Wayne in the middle of the night for some reason.
Sure. Might be asleep, but it's all right.
Yeah, don't count on that answer in case they mumbles it. All right, Winterfield Day
All right.
and portable ops.
We're back up here. Sorry, you gotta look at us twice.
More.
Well, first of all,
Hello.
yep.
Talking about repeaters, I've mentioned this a couple of times on our nets, but I'm putting a 6-meter repeater on the air. 5201 or 5301 is going to be the frequencies. It's a 1 meg split. 1072 is going to be the PL frequency. The received portion of it is going to be at the water tower. The transmit portion of it is going to be on Squaw Mountain, and it'll be a UHF link between the two of them. So there will be no need for monstrosity duplexers to put a 6-meter repeater back on there.
What was the frequencies again,
I
Don?
believe it's going to be 53, if I remember correct, this is off my top of my head, 5301 and 5401, and I know the PL tone I'm going to use is 1072.
And I think CFI has a transmitter problem.
Uh-oh, I tried it just yesterday and it was working fine.
Okay.
No coverage. There's a coverage. I think the snow on the trees is affecting all of the repeaters in coverage.
Okay.
I got a chainsaw.
Well, spring's coming.
Yeah, spring's coming.
Well, let's talk briefly about Winter Field Day. We just had Winter Field Day a week or so ago at Stan's beautiful 1800s ranch. Stan, thank you. We had 50 people. We had a bunch of stations set up. I think Brad had the coolest set up. He kind of found a little cubby hole in a building that was built back in the 1800s, and the sun was just hitting him right in the face, and he was just sitting there making CW contacts all morning. And so, but we had other stations, HF stations set up as well. Randy had his trailer out there. We had hot dogs. We had coleslaw. Okay, I fat fingered that one. Don't. I've been hearing about it ever since, but it was really good. Thank you to your wife and Dana as well. How many attended? Yeah, it was fantastic. We had a great time. We do the chili social at Stan's Place usually in October or early November. And then we do the field day in January, and it was fantastic weather.
I congratulate Stan on the weather again.
Yeah. What's that, 4 years in a row? All right, Stan.
After you guys left.
So, a few years ago, you may have heard of the Parker Militia. Well, don't think about that anymore.
I hope Dan's not listening.
We kind of disbanded. I don't know who started that group. I'm just going to say that right up front. But, we kind of just threw that out of reformat. Yeah, no more Parker Militia. We've rolled that into our portable deployment group, and it's now associated with the club exclusively, or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, no more militia. For the feds that are in the room, I know there's at least a couple.
Yeah, cover your ears.
Feds in here. So all of our activities now, pretty much every month, are under that heading of portable deployment. So we have put together a list of all the events for the rest of the year that fall under that category, and we're going to go over those with you now, so you can start getting them on your schedule. They'll come out in the blast as soon as we get it to Brian.
So other than Paul and I doing this today, you are the first to hear about it. We'll get it over to Brian, and I will get it over to Robert, who will get it onto our calendar, so it doesn't exist anywhere but my phone right now.
This is cool stuff. Just listen to this. Listen to what we got.
We started, January was Winterfield Day, so that's associated with the Portable Ops Group. February kind of fell to the wayside here with everything else that's been going on, so March will be the first one. So we are going to do a POTA activation of Chatsfield Park, which we did last year. I missed it, I was out of state, but Dana, you were there. What'd you think of it?
Brian was there.
Brian was there.
I was there.
Yeah. So the weather was pretty good from what I saw. We're able to spread out. There'll be details coming out in the blast of exactly where we're going to go, but roughly it's alongside the lake on what would be the east side of the lake, kind of more on the south end of it, correct?
Yeah,
Correct.
it's Aaron Reed Group Area Parking Lot.
Okay.
Does everybody know what POTA is? Parks on the Air? Okay. All right.
So we will have that for March. I'll go over dates here in just a second. April, we are going to do the parking lot safari.
We are. How many have been to one of our parking lot safaris? Yes. What a blast, right? We have a new location this year down here at Parker United Methodist Church. You just bring your vehicles out. It's show and tell. Show off your radios in your vehicle. Set up your portable HF station. Show that off. Bring a few things in your trunk or your truck to sell. And we're working on lunch. Don't have that confirmed yet, but anyway, it's a great day. Beautiful, usually beautiful weather. And yes, Kermit.
Do you have a date for that? Yep.
I'll go over dates.
Yeah, we'll go over dates
real quick
in a minute.
right
I just
now.
want to say that Over County Self-Reliance Expo is Saturday the 8th.
We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay. And,
Of April?
of April. We haven't got anything
Okay.
blasted out yet, but I'll let you know.
We
As soon as you
looking-
do, let us know, because we want to let
I
everybody know.
will, yeah.
What we try and do is our face-to-face and our Elmer meetings are typically Thursdays for the rest of the year, and or some Tuesdays. And we do the face-to-face first, the Elmer the second one, and roughly those dates kind of had to be what they had to be when we scheduled the library. So portable ops, we are going to set that as the third Saturday of the month, every month, with the exception of one, which will be November. I'll go over that one in a second. So third Saturday, and again, those dates will be on the calendar here.
So parking lot safari, fun time, 60, 70 people show up.
Yeah.
And that's April. Okay?
May, you said we weren't going to do the militia. May is gun range day. So we've done this once before. We go out to Ben Lamont, out in Kiowa, Elizabeth, Kiowa.
Oh, it's out.
South Iowa.
Yeah, all right, so we go out to Ben Lamont. We've got a couple of club members that are members that we can get some arrangements to get one of the ranges sequestered for the PRA. We want you to bring a radio and play a radio, and we also are working on a couple of gun surprises. So anyway,
Yeah, so if you
That
don't
will
have,
be-
you don't have any guns, but you'd like to come out, there's plenty of stuff to shoot. Plenty of stuff to play with, so feel free to come out even if you're not a gun person, but you
and play radio.
play radio.
Field day will be June, and we do have one other event in June. What was that? I missed that. The Parker Days.
Parker Days.
So that'll be portable ops for June.
Just real quick, the field day in June is our premier event. It's in Woodland Park. You can camp, you can come up for the day.
Campground.
Colorado Campground. We will go through this in detail the next few months, but get it on your calendar now. So the significant other, the wife, the girlfriend, whatever, not both of them, right? Don't want both of them. That joke's getting old. 10 years. I think Dan started that joke. Anyway, you want to come to field day in June. If you have a camper, you need to get a spot now. Recreation.gov, Colorado Campground. It's not a huge campground, but you need to get your own reservation. We have reservations for anyone that wants to tent camp. Done deal. We have group camping, group cooking, the group sites. Done deal. Club's taking care of all that. But if you have a trailer or you want to be away from us a little bit, then get your own site, but do it now. The sites are filling up.
July will be our first soda event. Summit's on the air. Haven't picked the summit, but we will have that in July. August will be another POTA activation of, and I'll mispronounce this one, Staunton Park up near Bailey. It's a new state park up in Bailey.
It's a pretty nice place.
Have you been up there?
Yeah, Staunton.
We may
Staunton.
task you just with some direction help on that since you've been up there.
There's fishing.
Yeah, you gotta hike out to the lake, but yeah.
Fishing, there's some other stuff, so you want to put that on your schedule.
Right, so that'll be August. September will be the second Summit on the Air outing. And October, we're gonna do a Jeep trip this year.
Yes.
So it will not be a take it and break it kind of day. It will be a trail ride type day, but
On horses?
no, on Jeeps.
You can bring your horse.
So it's not limited to a Jeep, but any four-wheel drive vehicle, I've got a couple of locations that I'm working on right now in mind. With that, any capable four-wheel drive, something other than the all-wheel drive car, should be able to make this trip. We're planning on kind of a long lunch up high where we can play radio. Is kind of the game plan on that one.
And we'll have some seats available if you don't have don't have an off-road vehicle or a Jeep or 4Runner or whatever, but you want to come along, we will have some seats for you.
That is October. Chili Social back down at Stan's if we can get it worked out. That will be the first part of November because all the holidays and travel and weather issues, so we're going to put that the first part of November. December, we take that month off because of holidays, travel, and everything that's going on. However, I will throw the caveat out, there may be a soda that month for those willing to partake. Winter Field Day will be January again, and we do have Wings Over the Rockies special event opportunity, but they have not finalized their calendar, so we don't know what those dates look like quite yet, correct?
Yeah, we'll do at least one this year.
Yeah.
If not, maybe two, but we'll do at least one.
So we may adjust a couple things here.
Based on when those
Based on when we have a Wings Over the Rockies opportunity. The B-17 probably won't be here, but...
No, Texas Raiders gone.
We heard that B-29 was not going to be back this year. I heard that from someone. So we can go out, there are various other activities they have out there, events. There is a helicopter fly-in. There is a bunch of other stuff. So if there's nothing really special that comes up, Randy will probably pick one of those events, and we'll try to schedule it on a weekend different, possibly, than what we've just gone over with you here the third Saturday. Or it might end up being that we have two events going the same day. You can pick whichever one you want to attend. So, any questions on our events coming up for 23 and then the 24?
I will throw out, if you have a park you want to do, or a peak that you want to do, or maybe you have an idea on the Jeep trip you would like us to include, email portableops@parkerradio.org. It'll come to at least you and I don't know who else is in that group, but I know it comes to you and I, and we'll take a look at that and we can roll it into it. If it's someplace you've been, like I just asked Pete about this, Staunton Park.
Extension Park.
He's been there. If you've been somewhere and you want to help us with at least planning how to get where we got to get to, we really appreciate that.
Please do not email Parker Militia.
Won't be able to us.
We've tried to close that email down, but it still seems to find its way to me. I don't know why.
Okay, so, one other thing too that didn't come up, Hamvention. Is anybody planning on going to Dayton or Zinnia for Hamvention? Besides me and us. Anyone else? It's a great time. Think about it. If you're gonna go, let us know. You know, we can get together when we're there.
What was that, Randy? I didn't hear.
Hamvention.
Hamvention.
It's in Dayton.
That'll be
Dayton
roughly May 20th. It's the weekend of May 20th.
A lot of fun.
We're gonna have a drawing to see who's gonna carry Paul's stuff around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it this year.
It's a big trade show and flea market. About 30,000 people attend.
So where is this?
It's in Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, they call it the Dayton Hamvention. It's actually in Xenia, which is right
okay.
outside of Dayton. But if you're not going this year, at some point in your ham radio future, you should plan a trip to the Dayton Hamvention. It'll be you'll go back every year once you go once.
If you drive with Paul, you get to meet the Dayton police.
Correct.
And while you're in Dayton, you can do a soda peak.
Yes, you can. There's about 8 of them just south of it.
Yeah.
Been on 2.
All right, so anybody takes any photos at any of these events, please send them to Mike. There's a listing on the website. Josh's got tons of them that he keeps putting out there. If you see really nice photos, they're his. He's got like $10 million camera or something. All right. Of course, I'm not going to dwell on this. The King Soopers program and Amazon Smile, I thought it went away. Okay. King Soopers has not gone away. So, if you have your King Soopers card where you get your discounts, that you can sign that up and, be able to donate a portion of your purchases. You never see it as transparent to you, but Kroger donates them to the club. And we make, about $2,000 a year? Something like that. All right, remote station, John?
Yeah, we're working on setting up a remote station for those that haven't heard, for the club use, for people that don't have an HF station, have issues with HOA at your home. We're looking at getting the station set up. We've been doing a fair amount of planning. We are still continuing that planning work. Hopefully going to actually start doing some equipment integration and start testing things out. And then hopefully in the near future, actually look at getting that deployed somewhere. And I'll be looking at doing training on how to use the station and things like that. So look forward to that later this year.
Okay, Jeff, is the SDR down?
Yes,
Okay.
it is currently.
For a time, we had the SDR up, and who knows, it may show up again in the future
I
somewhere
promised
else.
it through February 1st.
Okay.
And I did that, but I
I
needed the antenna for something
I
else.
understand. So Jeff needs an antenna. Anybody?
Yeah.
There is an SDR up in Fort Collins.
Okay.
There's about 10
SDR.
around the Denver
Maybe we
metro
should get
area.
those on the website.
Yeah.
So people can try them out. Okay, let's see, website update, Jeff.
In the interest of time, I'll just say unless you're having a problem with the website, please let us know. Email the board, email me, email the website committee, doesn't matter, email somebody, let us know there's a problem. Unless somebody's having a problem, we're kind of in steady state, things are working well, cruising along right now.
Okay, Robert, the PRA shirt situation, and if anybody needs a name tag, we're testing the site right now where we can get them and find out what the turnaround time is, and if it's short, which we hope, we'll go ahead and get that information out. You can get a name tag for the club, similar to this, which is hard to read from there, but look around. Somebody's got one on.
So, you ready for me?
Yep.
So next big order will be next month in March. So we'll get on the website and get your t-shirts ordered. I'll get those orders in. If Alan or Tony are here tonight. All right.
Oh.
I have shirts.
Okay, financial report, Robert, real quick.
Real quick, last year.
Bring that up.
I didn't download it on
Oh,
my
okay.
laptop.
Okay.
I didn't think of it, sorry.
That's all right. So last year, we did actually for cash income and expenses, bring in an extra $4,400 to the good. So last year was a good year for us. We did receive our last Amazon Smile payment this month. They made one big lump payment to all the charities that had been involved in the program.
I did my best.
Huh?
I did my best.
Oh, yeah. And then it was $121 we got last week sometime.
Nice. So, Shop King Supers.
Yeah.
Or not. We just make money. The club does. All right, you ready?
No, I can't see it.
Oh.
Hold on.
Scott, would you like a microphone?
No, I think I can do it. We sound okay there, Dirk?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm not a Facebook guy, where do I go?
Facebook.
You
Me either. And then 30J. Let's see if I can bring that up. Yeah.
Hey, look at that.
There we go. All right, real quick here. See how to explain all this. Bring it all together here. So this is a DXpedition, 3Y0J to the Bovet Island, which is down in Antarctica. That group has been working for several years to put this event on. And for how many HF operators? Let me just see hands. Okay. How many know of DXpeditions as HF operators? Anybody worked at DXpedition? I'll get a couple, 3, 4. Okay. So DXpeditions are to rare areas on the globe that don't get activated, and there are a lot of chasers that are seeking those to get their DXCC awards, amongst other things. This group that went down to Bovet Island, they're there right now. And I'll give you a little backstory to that. I was in Orlando this last weekend for Hamcation. I travel with Elecraft, as most of you know. Eric and Wayne are the two owners of Elecraft. Eric and I did this trade show, and Eric sent 8 K3s on this DXpedition. That's the radio they are using. So because of that, I got some inside intel on how they put this thing together and kind of what's going on. And then there's also some concerns of etiquette and some issues going on with how people are trying to make contacts with them. So I'm just going to kind of really whip through this pretty quick. But the bottom line is this little island, it's a rock out in the Atlantic, and it's got a glacier snow cap on top of it that is always changing and moving. And the guys that go down there on the last DXpedition, which was about 10 years ago, they had gotten onto a ship that was in dry dock. It was an old military craft. They loaded it up with 2 helicopters. It had 2 landing pads on it. They sail it from South Africa for about 3 weeks to get there. They go down there, an engine failed. The weather was crappy. They couldn't get the helicopters off the deck. They couldn't activate the island. The ship, because it had come out of dry dock, it was not a proven vessel at that point. They'd done a bunch of work to it. So they chugged back for almost 5 weeks to get back to South Africa, during which time the seas are rough, the toilet's backed up, they're volcanoing inside this old military ship. It was a horrific trip. So this group says, we're not going to do that. They got a different charter boat to go down. They are down on this, it's a big ship. When they went down this time, they have to free anchor, if you will. They have to stay off the coast by about 3 miles. The seas are rougher than crap down there right now. And then what they do is they load up into hard-bottom Zodiac boats with their gear, and they go ashore to set up. Now when they go ashore, they're in Gumby suits because it's the Atlantic. It's 34-degree water. So they ride the Zodiac in, but the Zodiac can't land due to the rocks at the beach. So they had one of their guys, who's one of the lead guys, he swam 100 yards from the Zodiac to the shore. He puts an anchor down and strings a line back to the Zodiacs that are anchored off in the waves. They jump in their Gumby suits. Randy, can you hit play on this real quick? It's a real short little video, one of those two. They jump out of the Zodiac and they take a barrel, it's a 55-gallon drum with the radios and the equipment in it that's sealed up, and they swim dragging a 55-gallon drum through heavy surf to get to the beach. Once they get to the beach, they ditch the Gumby suits, put on their cold weather gear, and then this is them coming in. Jeez.
I'll go.
Yeah, who wants to go? In doing this, the only thing on this island are seals and penguins.
Wait, there's no Starbucks on this island?
It's on the other side.
Oh, okay.
In doing this, they had to bring a ladder ashore because when they get up to the area that they're going to operate in, there's their Gumby suits. And you can see it's a team effort to get on shore. You can stop that, Randy, if you want, and go.
Okay.
See if there's a picture that shows the island, and I can go over their operating position. It should be just a little scroll down. That's what the island looks like there. You can see there's no place really to land. They did all their planning with satellite imagery that was a couple of years old. The ice cap has moved. Rocks due to storm have moved. It isn't what they expected when they got there.
That's what it looks like.
Let's see. Yes. So what they did, they were wanting to go up on this shelf back up here is where they're trying to get out of the surf, because the storms come in and the water goes right up to the ice. What they had to do, they had to bring a ladder in to get across get up the cliff and go across some of the chasms in the ice. And this is where they have set up. They have 2 antennas. They're just 2 wire antennas. They only have 2 radios. They have one Honda 2200 generator that's gas. If you know anything about ships, they're diesel. So they had to bring special gas, just gasoline for this. They do have a kilowatt generator that's diesel. They can't get it on shore. It's too big. They can't put it in a barrel, and they have no way of getting other fuel. So the reason I go over all of this is people wanting to work this ski expedition, obviously. These guys are doing the very best they can do with the conditions that they've got at hand. The radios are operating on 100 watts only. It's 2K3s on wire antennas. One night the storm came in real bad. They had to ditch the antennas and get them down because it was 60 to 80 mile an hour winds and an ice storm. They were hoping that the tent survived. They had to stay on. They stayed out there a couple of nights at a time. Then they go back to the ship due to all the heroics they have to do to get back to the Zodiac, to get back to the boat. The initial plan was to eat on the boat, take the Zodiacs all the way in, run up, play radio, change shifts. Those people come back and eat. That was the game plan, but obviously none of that is working out. So with that, it's hard to hear them. They are doing one FT8 station part of the time. They are doing a CW station, and they're doing sideband phone station, and as I just said, there's only 2 radios. So they're having to alternate shifts on when they do what. So with that, be patient with these people because they're doing the very best they can. We have had tons of complaints when I was in Orlando. People were talking about, hey, the etiquette of the ham community that are chasers trying to get these guys are not behaving too well. There are people being pirates saying they're this station on the air and pulling people away, and they're not. If you can barely hear them, you're probably talking to the right people. They are operating, when they operate phone, they're operating split. So they transmit on one frequency, anywhere 2 to 5 hertz different, or 2 to 5 kilohertz different from their receive frequency. So things are changing, they're dynamic down there. On the FT8 side.
Are they doing Foxhound?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with it enough to explain it. Can you explain?
Not really, but there is a setting under, you go under File and your Settings, and then you go all the way over to Advanced, and then there's a drop-down menu, and there's special ways special activation, like for Field Day and all the rest of the stuff. And you can click Fox or Hound. You click Hound because you're chasing them as the Fox. And then the interaction on FT8 is different. It's much more rapid, quick, boom, boom, boom.
And the exchange is a little different.
The exchange is a little bit different, but you don't want to try and get them on the standard FT8 format.
So don't do that. Again, if you understand how to work split, have at it. If you don't understand how to work split, get a hold of somebody who does. I know Dana is good at it. Paul can do it. I've played with it a little bit. I'm not real fluent at it, but we can get you help if you want to try and work these people. John?
On that FT8 mode also, well, when you're in Fox and Hound mode, you as a hound chasing the fox should always operate above 1,000 hertz.
Will be closing in 20 minutes.
In any fox and hound situation, proper operation would be when you're setting your transmit point in the waterfall, make sure you're above 1,000 hertz. The fox will always be operating below that, and you'll see multiples. Then depending on whether they're transmitting on odd or even, make sure you can receive the fox that you're trying to find, in this case this station or any other fox. If you can't hear them, don't bother transmitting. And so that's a lot of the problem we're seeing right now with this particular DXpedition, is a lot of people are just transmitting in the blind, or they're transmitting in that lower portion where just the foxes should be, and that makes it impossible for others to hear them also. So that's kind of some of the keys when operating Fox and Hound. It's a little different from normal FT8 operation.
You said they QRT'd Monday.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
They're done.
Okay.
They ran out of gas,
That's
literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So some of these operations, and Dana can maybe elaborate, but probably if you get your general on a Wednesday, online, and you're just vaguely understand FT8 or contesting, you probably shouldn't be on a contest the coming weekend. Get on the contest by all means and listen and learn that way. Get help from someone in the club. But now DXpedition is a whole nother level above that. It takes some skill and finesse and understanding of the rules and understanding how the station that's on the DXpedition is operating. Split is something, we've talked about that before. How many people tonight can go home and set up split on their HF radio? Okay, because we talked about that, right? Practice that. We talked about that. So it takes some planning, takes some understanding, and there are a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot, but there's a handful of people in this club that are very, very, very good at this. And so if you want to work at the Expedition, some of them are easy to work, and you won't have any issues at all if you know how to do split. But then some of them are very difficult, and there are a lot of DXpeditions that I have never worked. I hear them, and I want to work them, and I'm patient, because you have to be patient in this game, right, Dana?
Yeah, well, this particular DXpedition, they're number 2 on the DXCC list, the most
Right.
wanted, and they will probably not go back to that island during the remainder of some of our lives.
Right.
That's how hard it is to get to.
Some of those are very, very rare because this is a nature preserve, uninhabited. It took them years and years and years to get permission from Norway, actually. Norway, kind of a weird deal, but it takes them years to plan this out. And so.
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a post site.
It is. Right.
So we have just a couple minutes. Dana, would you like to, is there any comments you'd like to quickly make?
Don't be that guy that caused deliberate QRM. That's about all I can say. Don't be that guy. Learn how to use split, how to use Fox and Hound, and learn to listen. That's, and ask. Ask if you have any questions. I think Glenn did, he asked on the chat site there how to set up split.
Did you work them, Dana?
I did work them, but it was FT8, long path, 17 meters, at 9:11 in the morning on Monday, just before they quit.
Excellent.
And I only heard them 3 times in a week.
Right, excellent, very good.
Wow.
Question?
I was just wondering if you guys are going to do any presentations on contesting?
That is not slated, but I won't throw it out. We'll definitely put it on.
It's field day. What are you talking about?
Yeah, come to field day.
Hey, it's not a contest.
You know, field day, and that's, Wayne just made a great point. Field day is a contest. We run it a little more as a social event, but it is a contest. We do turn in our score. We have ranked as high as number 2 in Colorado and fairly well nationally over several years. So that's the first place to start. It's field day. Come out because you can get on the radio. You can get people like Wayne to sit with you, help you through the process, how it works, understand the terminology, the cadence, all the things that you have to know. So great question and great comment, and we will work on doing a presentation at some point. That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Chad.
Any other questions, or feel free to, just like we just Googled the call sign at Facebook, and you can take a look and do a little reading on there. You don't have to be a Facebooker, but I knew they had stuff posted.
There's something else that there's a lesson here too. Wire, antenna, 100 watts, right? I mean, everybody loves amps and all that kind of stuff, but think about where they're at. I don't know how many QSOs they had, where they were all at, but you don't need something elaborate. You don't even need a K3, which is not necessarily an elaborate radio at this point, right? But simple. You can start out simple, and a lot of us, we still use this type of setup because it works. So don't think you have to have a...
Last night I talked to a guy in Cincinnati using this, and he had the same radio on his end with just a wire antenna strung along the fence in the backyard. From here to Cincinnati on a $59 radio that fits in my shirt pocket. So Paul's right. I have an amp, I have a tower, but this was on 3-4 watts on a wire.
I thought your tower's on the ground.
Well, my tower's in the barn, but I own it. It's not in the area. I have
a tower too.
Jeff's our chief technical officer, just so you know that.
I have 2 towers and a stepper in my barn, and one of the towers is going up this summer. It's my project.
There's a lot of little radios like that too. That True
Yeah.
SDX,
Yeah.
Dr. Russia. Of course, I was using my X-Team on my tower. It's actually
It's up, not in the barn.
But those things work pretty well, surprisingly.
Sunspots.
All right, any other questions?
Do you know what part of the island they were on, like where?
They were in the southeast corner.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, they had a big volcano on the northwest corner. So basically the all of North America was shadowed.
Yeah.
So the only way you could really get to them is long path.
Nice.
Because a lot of these islands, you can't go wherever you want.
Right. That's what he did.
Go where they tell you. Yeah. that's really important to know. It's not, they don't have access to the whole island. Through negotiations back and forth for years, they're allowed to go one place, one location on the island, if it's an island. And so they might have rather been in another location, but through the negotiations with the nature preserve people, that's where they had to be.
Okay, 800
other
feet from the
questions
beach
about
to the campsite, they had to drag all that stuff. 800 feet. Imagine dragging a 55-gallon drum full of stuff up 800 feet.
Across a ladder.
Across the ladder, across volcanic rock.
After
Yeah.
swimming in.
Yes.
Yeah, after swimming in the ocean at 34 degrees.
And they paid to do that, probably 25 grand a person.
Yeah.
So, plus there's a tremendous amount of other funding as well. Donations that go along with that. They couldn't have ever done it with just their own.
Okay, any other questions about this or anything else? I'm going to throw one other one out too. Is there anything that the club, you'd like to see the club doing that we're not currently doing?
Because we do stuff.
Yeah, because we do stuff and do.
Yeah.
Come on, anybody got any
The
ideas?
expedition, anybody?
Anything. We're open for anything. Or send an email to the board. If there's something on your mind and you really think we should be kind of getting involved in it. All right, remember, Elmer Night, February 21st, next Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m. Be there.
Right here.
Aloha.
Right here.
That's this Sunday.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, one other thing. Yeah, thank
Yes.
you, Woody.
Good, Woody.
Aurora Amateur Association Swamp Fest is this Sunday. We have 4 tables. Okay? Get out there when they open at 9 o'clock. By 10:30 to 11, the thing starts winding down. 9 o'clock, Adams County Fairgrounds. Please come out. Just come sit at the tables, work the tables with us. Do whatever you'd like to do. Just 4 tables. Bring your stuff out to sell. That's this Sunday.
Yeah.